Tatiana Jefferson killed in her own home.
Put your hands up. Show me your hands.
The 28-year-old woman was shot inside through a window.
The officer did not announce that he was a police officer prior to shooting.
Her home, a place she should have been safe.
Her 8-year-old nephew was in the room when she was shot.
Heavily edited body cam video released by Fort Worth police.
We went from a welfare check to a woman being killed by the cops.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want it now?
The Texas officer who shot and killed a woman inside her own home during a welfare check is being interviewed by investigators today. 28-year-old Tatiana Jefferson was reportedly playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew early Saturday morning when a Fort Worth officer were called to her home by a concerned neighbor. That neighbor says that he was worried after noticing her front door had been open for some time. As officers walked around the house, one of them shot through the window, killing Jefferson. Police say that officer never identified himself before shooting her. Protesters are demanding that he is arrested and fired.
Are you gonna say to this camera that he needs to be locked up and lose his job? That's all he needs to be done.
The attorney for the victim's family wants an independent investigation, saying Fort Worth police should not be investigating themselves. I want to bring in HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson and CNN law enforcement contributor Steve Moore. Thank you both for joining us. Steve, I want to start with you because we do see this internal investigation. There's a couple things that were brought to my attention. First and foremost, the officer never announced that he was there. However, they have released at least partial body cam, and if I'm not mistaken, they've also released images of a weapon, but we don't know where that weapon was at the time of the shooting. So what's your take on all this?
My take on it is I think there's this big disconnect between seeing somebody and perceiving that person as a threat. I mean, yes, I understand that the reason you were called there is a potential that somebody might have been in the house. But here's the deal. He didn't see a gun. He never claims he saw a gun. He was saying, show me your hands, which means he doesn't see a gun. And to fire that way, I mean, what was the person going to do? Jump through the window at them? I mean, I think at this point, you've got a real serious issue.
All right, Joey, I want to talk about some of the legal ramifications. And first and foremost, we are waiting for a press conference. Well, we'll hear the latest from the police department. But the family's attorney is calling for an outside investigation. Your take on the internal investigation, and should there be more?
Without question, good to be with you, Elizabeth, and my friend Steve Moore. Look, I have a number of concerns about this. Let's start with the tactics involved. To your point about announcing yourself, right? You announce police, right? If you think they have a weapon, right, there's no indication that they did. I'm not understanding the actual firing or the necessity of it, but tactically, right, you should announce yourself, and then thereafter, right, if you're saying show me your hands, ought you not to give a person the opportunity to do that? So tactically speaking, the non-announcement, them coming without sirens, etc., I have a problem with. From a legal perspective, I have an issue with the issue of whether the shooting was justified. It appears not. Why? There should be an immediate use, right? There's forces used when there's an issue that you think that you're in immediate fear of your life being taken away or serious physical injury. Where is that, right? Where's the immediacy of the threat? So from a legal perspective, I have an issue with that. And from an optical perspective, they released this image of a gun in the home. Really? I mean, that does nothing but, I think, destroy community relations. It's out of context. You're allowed to have a gun. This is Texas. Gun ownership is rampant. It's in the own home. There's no indication that she had it, was next to it, where it was found, but you just do that? Why? That's a problem. Last point to the core issue. In terms of police investigating themselves, I don't like it. I do agree that there needs to be an independent investigation because it's about trust with the community. It's about bridging gaps. And when you have police investigating police, just like you have lawyers investigating lawyers, right, you need an independent entity to do that. So whether that's federal, whether that's state, it should not be the local officials who work with the people involved, period. Right.
All excellent points. Steve, I want to weave you back into the conversation. Tensions are already high in this area. We just came off covering the Amber Geiger trial. This is the 9th police-involved shooting by Fort Worth police officers. From your experiences, does there need to be more training? Is there anything that could be done?
Well, I don't know if they need more training or just to fix the training they're being given, because obviously something happened here where the officer, I mean, as Joey said, using deadly force is your last resort, not your first. My thought on this, and I've been in this situation, I've had people on the other side of a window, on the other side of a door. I've had people hide their hands intentionally from me. You can take cover. You don't have to just aggressively end the potential threat. And if you're not seeing a gun and you feel there's a threat to you, why can't you move outside of the window? This is a serious, I don't know if it's training, culture, or whatever, but this is not a fix. This is a rebuild.
And Joey, we know that her nephew was in the home. In fact, may have been the only witness aside from officers. How does this play out in the future?
I think it needs to play out where, you know, I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know whether it's an actual training issue, whether they have to get their act together,
Joey,
whether
I'm
they're
so
scared.
sorry. I have to, unfortunately, I have to interrupt you. We're going to go live now to Fort Worth, where Lee Merritt, the attorney for Tatiana's family, is holding a news conference. Let's listen in.
Serious systematic reform. We are asking that the federal government comes in, the Department of Justice comes in and takes a conscious look at the policies and procedures that allowed something like this tragedy to happen. This was a wellness call. It's beyond me to begin to understand what kind of police force responds to a wellness call with the equivalent of SWAT. This department and their officers violated not only the rights of Tay Jefferson and her family, but they just made common sense mistakes. They passed an open door. They failed to announce themselves. They passed a second open door. They failed to announce themselves. They creeped around the back of the apartment and entered a closed gate. They didn't have probable cause at this point, from what the neighbor told them, to even enter that property. They began creeping around and they created a deadly situation. The idea that they have blasted images of a firearm across the internet is obscene. Of course, a family owns a firearm. Of course, firearms are used to protect individuals from predators prowling about their property. That's only common sense. They created a deadly situation, and they responded in a way that is not unique to the city of Fort Worth. In the last 6 months, they've had 10 officer-involved shootings, seven officer-involved deaths. That's more than most nations for a single city in Texas. It represents a serious problem that must be addressed. So, of course, this family is calling for the firing of this officer. That's benign. That's the least we should expect. They're calling for this officer to be vigorously prosecuted, to be appropriately sentenced. That prosecution, the investigation, should be handled by someone other than the Fort Worth Police Department, specifically the Department of Justice, the FBI, or worst case scenario, the local sheriff's department. Anyone other than the city of Fort Worth who was clearly incompetent to investigate itself should be called in. We expect this to happen immediately. This happened Saturday. Why this man is not in handcuffs right now is a source of continued agitation for this family and for this community, and it must be addressed. In a moment, you'll hear from Corey Hughes, who is an activist and a member of the Fort Worth community, and then you'll hear directly from the family of Tay Jefferson.
Just for the correct spelling of my name, it is C-O-R-Y, last name Hughes, H-U-G-H-E-S. The reality is I've had the unfortunate responsibility of sitting in front of these cameras and sitting next to families that have lost loved ones by the hands of police officers all too often. As a member of the community of Fort Worth, as someone that has taken the responsibility to be a voice for my community, I want to set the record straight that We're not looking for a 30-day suspension. We're not looking for a slap on the wrist. We're not looking for what seems to be status quo, is that the people that we hire to serve and protect us, when one of their own violates the community, it seems like they do more of trying to serve and protect their own. So what we're looking for is for this officer not only to be fired, but we're demanding that this officer be charged as well, like the criminal that he is. It's a sad commentary in this day and age that someone could be sitting in their home playing a video game with a family member and not be safe. That when someone calls the police for a wellness check, that instead of them checking on how well she is, days later we're here talking about the fact that an officer took her life. It's unacceptable. We're demanding justice. We're demanding that the mayor and the city officials don't sweep this under the rug. We're not going to allow you to. This life mattered. This life mattered. This family matters. And we're demanding justice, and we're not going to wait. We demand justice now. Thank you.
All right, the next person we hear from is going to be the brother of Tatiana Jefferson, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
My name is Darius Carr. I am currently stationed in San Diego. I served my country for the last 12 years. In that time, I've been trained and taught. There are pre-planned responses to everything you do. Everything you're trained about, there's a way to do things. When you don't do it the way you've been trained or way you've been taught, you have to answer for that. You have been trained. You know better, so you have to answer for that. Not in your command, not in your department. Someone comes in, investigates the whole incident. Fort Worth PD cannot investigate themselves. U.S. Navy is allowed to do it. They should not be well. This man murdered someone. He should be arrested.
And we want to continue to echo the calls and be clear that this family is standing in solidarity, that Fort Worth needs to recuse itself from this investigation. And they need to bring in an outside agency. They need to make sure this officer is treated like any other criminal suspect in our criminal justice system. The next person that you're going to hear from is the sister of the sister of Tay, and her name is Amber.
I'm Amber Carter.
Can I ask you to scoot up just a little bit? I'm sorry.
Okay. Amber Carter, I'm one of her older sisters. We're 11 months apart. We grew up together. The last time I spoke to my sister was last Saturday. She came to the hospital in Plano where I was recovering from a major heart surgery. She came, brought me food. She brought me a new cell phone. She talked about how this weekend actually was the weekend that she and my older sister were planning to take the boys to the fair, and asked me what did I want back, considering she knew I wasn't going to be able to walk the fair park. My sister, the relationship she has with my sons is undescribable. Sometimes people think that they're her kids and not mine. She helped Zion every day to get ready for school because my mother wasn't capable of doing it. She wrote out a schedule so that he could be organized. She helped him understand that he had to be responsible for putting on his clothes, picking out his clothes, and getting ready on time to leave for the day. Those were things that my mom did for him. So she helped him become more independent and self-sufficient. My son, who was there to witness the event, you would think that, you know, he would show some type of sadness or emotions, but the first time I actually got to see him and pick him up from a facility for children, the first thing he told me was he was sad. And I asked him, why was he sad? And he told me because the police had shot his aunt. And at that time, I knew nothing about that. So he was the one who actually told me what happened. But at this time, he's my motivation. He's my biggest encourager. In the middle of the night when I'm crying, he wakes up and tells me to breathe in my nose and out my mouth. He holds me, he hugs me. And these are the things I should be doing for him, but he's not reacting in that manner. He's helping me to be strong. And I believe that's because my sister had a big part in that.
The next person that you're going to hear from, she's prepared a statement. I'm going to allow her to come around. Her name is Ashley Carr, and she's the older sister.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Carr. I was Tatiana Jefferson's oldest sister. I'm here to read a statement from the family so that we can all be on one accord. An arc of a moral universe is a long one, but it bends towards justice. Martin Luther King. Our family first would like to thank the thousands who called, who sent messages, who reached out via social media, offering words of encouragement and condolences. We appreciate your powerful solitude with us as we go through this unbelievable time of shock and sorrow. Secondly, our family would like you to know more about this beautiful soul, Tatiana Jefferson. She was a smart, ambitious, kind person with a nurturing spirit. She was a graduate of Xavier University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in mathematics, that's me, in biology, and was committed to furthering her education. She was a hard worker where her co-workers saw her as a person of full integrity. She loved her family so much that at the age of 28, she decided to move into our mother's home to help her as her health was declining. Honor, integrity, commitment, and service. These are the attributes of Tatiana Jefferson. Any parent would be proud to call her a daughter. Any sibling would be proud to call her a sister. Any employer would be proud to call her an employee. Any neighborhood would be proud to have her as a neighbor. And any city would be proud to have her as a citizen. And yet, in the early mornings of October 11, 2019, she was simply going on along with her life, living a law-abiding citizen's peaceful life. And she was killed by a reckless act of a Fort Worth police officer. There is simply no justification for his actions. She was enjoying a life in her home where no one would have expected it to be her life to be in harm's way, especially not at the hands of a civil servant who had taken the oath to serve and protect. Our family now is asking the city of Fort Worth to exhibit the same characteristics of a Tatiana Jefferson, to be honorable when it comes to narrating the memory of this beautiful soul, to have integrity and bring the federal government in to investigate, to be committed to a swift and appropriate prosecution, serve the entire community of Fort Worth by training your officers to execute responses to appropriate situations. In closing, we demand justice for Tatiana through an independent, thorough, and transparent process. The family of Tatiana Jefferson and the world eagerly awaits your response to this tragedy. It is imperative that your response bends towards justice. Thank you.
You're next going to hear from the sister of Yolanda Carr, who is the mother. I'm going to take the seat back there.
Perfect.
Who is the mother of Tay Jefferson. She couldn't be with us today because she is hospitalized and she's recovering from injuries that predated this incident. Those injuries are the reason that Tay moved in with her mom, that she was at this address because she was helping her back and forth to the hospital and helping her around the home. She wants to be here and stand with her family. We have been back and forth to the hospital with her every night, keeping her in the loop. She is, of course, heartbroken, and her sister wants to speak on her behalf.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benita Body. I am Tatiana's aunt and Yolanda Carr's, Tay's mother, oldest sister. I'm speaking on her behalf today because she could not be here. As you have heard, her health is declining. And I've heard of the allegations of Mr. Marquise Jefferson, is what I want to address, claiming to be her biological father, which he is not, nor has he ever had legal custody of her. We have not as a family heard from Mr. Jefferson, and if he cares to reach out to us, we would be more than happy to address his concerns. And I want you to know that the GoFundMe page, that is family approved to Tay's legal family. And I thank everyone for their outreach, for their giving, and for the love that they have shown us today.
All right, thank you so much. And we have asked you all not to direct questions to the family. I'm sure you all have some for them, but I and Corey Hughes or some of the pastors and attorneys who are working on the case with me are happy to answer some questions.
All right, you have been listening live to a press conference. You can see there, Lee Merritt is in the center, and then he is being surrounded by family members. Family members of 28-year-old Tatiana Jefferson. She was reportedly killed in the early morning hours of Saturday morning. We have a lot to break down from not only the personal side, but also the legal side. So we're going to bring back Joey Jackson and Steve Moore after a very quick break. So please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've been joining us and you've been listening live to a press conference out of Fort Worth, where we've been hearing from Lee Merritt, the attorney for the family of 28-year-old Tatiana Jefferson, who was reportedly playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew early Saturday morning when there was a welfare call to her home. And just minutes later, she was shot dead by a police officer there. I want to bring in HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson and CNN law enforcement contributor Steve Moore. Gentlemen, there is a ton to break down from this press conference. But Joey, I want to start with you because I made a note at the very beginning of that press conference. We heard from Lee Merritt, the family attorney. He's someone who we're familiar with. He said right at the beginning, that police did not have probable cause to come near the home. Is that true? If there's a welfare call, do police have the right to check on the home?
Well, I think the issue more so, Elizabeth, is not really the probable cause to be there. Clearly, if there's a phone call and the phone call suggests that a door is ajar and there may be something amiss from a concerned neighbor, the police should be there. I think the issue is what you do thereafter. Is there any probable cause once you get there from your independent assessment to determine that there's criminality such that you have to shoot someone? And so that's really at core of the issue. What I heard certainly in the press conference here, takeaways, right? The first is the independent nature of any investigation. It's clear that there's no trust for the police department there to investigate their own. And so there was a pretty clear indication that we want the federal government in here to investigate. And even if it's some other entity, as long as it's not Fort Worth, I think they'd be satisfied with that. The other issue, in addition to the independent investigation, is some measure of justice and accountability. You heard them say that they want the officer not only fired. When I say they, I'm talking about the attorney, in addition to Mr. Hughes, the community activist, not only fired, but arrested. So I think there's that issue where they want justice there. And then there was clearly, my other takeaway was, what's the deal? Is it a training issue? Are they appropriately trained? Are they doing what's necessary? I mean, are people just scared, you know, to be there? Are officers scared of the people they're policing? What is going on? And so if I had, you know, my takeaways of the press conference, that's what it would be. The independent investigation, the holding of accountability of the officer, and a revamping and remodeling of the way police are engaging in their jobs, such that they're appropriately trained so that they don't kill people unnecessarily. And,
Steve, when we talk about how the police are engaging, we don't know the name of the officer. We haven't seen his photograph. We know he's been on the force for, if I'm not mistaken, since 2018. We know that there's been some body camera released, not the entire body camera. He didn't identify himself before the shots went off. We know there's a photograph of a weapon, no context to that. A lot of unknowns. And yes, it just happened on Saturday morning, but you have a lot of people with a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah, and there should be a lot of questions on this. This was a relatively new officer. And, you know, I went back and reviewed the FBI's requirement for using lethal force. And it's when the officer or the agent has a reasonable belief that they are in imminent danger of losing their life or having serious bodily injury. The important word here is reasonable. I mean, a reasonable belief. I don't think, from the face of it, and I wasn't there, but from everything I've seen, I don't see a reasonable belief that there was a danger. And so it's not just, oh, well, I think that. They have to be better trained. They have to understand. They have to have more experience. If this is not, if this is how they're coming out of the academy, you know, the other thing is legal right to shoot if you believe you have it in imminent danger doesn't mean it's necessary to shoot. It just means that that's your option if everything goes south. And right then, he had a lot more options than shooting.
Well, and just to elaborate on that, we talked earlier, this is the 9th police-involved shooting by Fort Worth officers. But I will say, now that we've heard from the family, the pressure is certainly on the police to respond. We are waiting for them. Joey Jackson, Steve Moore, thank you for bringing a little bit of a clarity to a situation where certainly we have so many questions. What we do know, unfortunately, is that 28-year-old Tatiana Jefferson, who is clearly loved by family, is no longer with us. We remember her today as we look for more answers. We are going to take a quick break. We will be right back.